Can I go ahead, Chloe? Or just want to wait a sec? Okay. All right, well, we'll get things started. We're a little bit behind. Welcome. It's Tuesday, March 19th, and we're here in council chambers. And before we go to adoption of the agenda, just a couple of quick remarks. Welcome back to Councillor O'Sullivan. We're happy to have you in person again. You offered an excellent opportunity for us to test our new hybrid technologies, and I think for the most part, they ended up working out. So happy to have you back, Councillor O'Sullivan. Councillor Strachan sends her regrets this evening. She's a little bit under the weather, so we wish her a speedy recovery. And I hope everyone had a good spring or March break. I know there was snow on the ground yesterday morning, but spring is just around the corner. A couple of reminders. We have our Bunny Hop on Saturday, March 23rd. This is an event that's organized by the Old Town Kemptville BIA and is a signature event for families in the community. I know my kids cherished it. I think I only have one now who would willingly participate, and he's almost 12. But we know it'll be very popular. And next Thursday, March 28th, before the Easter long weekend, we have our Civic Awards ceremony and reception. I was told today by Jill Sturdy that we have approximately 50 people who have RSVP'd for the award. So this includes family, friends, hockey teams, colleagues of the recipients. So we look forward to that ceremony and reception, which begins at 6:30 next Thursday, March 28th. I'm sorry? No dogs. Yes, it's true. We had a canine as a recipient last year. Now I remember that. So I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll invite a council colleague to read the land acknowledgement, please. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Hope I turned the right button on. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Colleagues, that is that the agenda for the regular council meeting on March 19th, 2024 be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Sullivan, any comments or questions on the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor, please. Good, that carries, thank you. No closed session this evening, so no report out of closed, obviously. Disclosures of interest, colleagues, council colleagues, any declarations of interest in regards to perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from any item on the agenda this evening. Scanning the room, seeing no hands, we'll move on. We'll go straight to our consent agenda. We do not have any delegations this evening. As we know, items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine or no longer require further discussion. As such, they are enacted in one motion. The exception to this rule is that a member may request that one or more items be pulled for discussion. Anything you wish to pull tonight, colleagues? All right. I did receive a suggestion that we pull the 2023 annual drinking water report under K.8.2. So perhaps we'll do that. So we can ask a couple of quick questions. We know that our Environmental Action Committee has taken great interest in the methodology and provincial guidelines, which mandate how we report out on our water quality. So it may just be an opportunity to highlight some of those areas where certainly as a municipality, we're under very close surveillance for our water quality. So, all right. So with that, I'll look for a motion for the approval of items on the consent agenda, recognizing that K.8.2 will be removed for discussion. Mover and a seconder, please. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan. I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. No minutes of previous meetings, and going straight to reports. We're going to go to the Mayor's Task Force on Clean Technology. This is a revised terms of reference. I think, council colleagues, you received track changes documents over the weekend that highlighted some of the areas where, in consultation with both the Environmental Action Committee and the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee, as well as council colleague, Councillor Strachian, and a couple of very passionate members of the Environmental Action Committee, we were able to make some important changes or propose some changes to the terms of reference that I think better reflect the spirit of the terms of reference. So the motion this evening is that council accept and adopt the revised version 2 terms of reference. Appoint the following individuals to the Mayor's Task Force on Clean Technology in accordance with the membership section. These would include 4 members of a current subcommittee within CDAC, Wayne Brown, James McNeil, Charlie Boland, and Greg Lane. Appoint Debbie Wilson as the council representative in addition to myself. Direct staff to solicit community applications and advisory committee appointees for the Mayor's Task Force on Clean Technology. And these would be an additional, I think, 2 community appointees, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And to approve to approve the proposed 2024 budgetary allocation for the Mayor's Task Force in the amount of up to $17,500. So that's the essence of the motion. So maybe to get it on the table, we'll accept and move it in a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson. All right. Any comments on the terms of reference? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, under the item membership, it says the mayor, 1 council member, 5 to 8 community members with a range of knowledge, skills, experience relevant to the work of the task force. And then the community membership will include 4 members from the community and 1 representative from the Environmental Action Advisory Committee, 1 representative from Agricultural and Rural Affairs, and 2 additional community members. But it doesn't in here mention the 4 members from CDAC who are, I believe, part of this task force. So they're not included in here anywhere.
If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Preston, we were generally describing the composition of the committee in the terms of reference, whereas the motion that's just been moved does specifically name 4 members of the CDAC subcommittee, which is where the idea for the task force was generated as individuals who would be part of that composition from the community. Do I have that right, Ms. Preston?
Yes, in the clean version, without the track changes to Councillor O'Sullivan, it notes 4 members from the Community and Economic Development Advisory Committee. So it may just be the way that the track changes were showing on the document, but the clean version, as proposed for acceptance in the motion, does indicate the 4 members of the Community and Economic Development Advisory Committee, the 1 representative from the Environmental Action, the 1 representative from Ag and Rural Affairs, as well as the 2 additional community members that we will look to solicit as item number 3 under the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. My apologies. I was doing all my reading through the track changes one, and between the red and the strikeouts, I missed that part. Sorry. Thank you.
Easily, I think, easy confusion there, because having worked on that track changes version, it was difficult to comprehend all of the pieces of the terms of reference.
I have one more question, if I may. On the motion, it says regarding identified in current budget, it says no, but should it not say yes? Because it is included in the current budget, I believe.
So apologies, when we first created the report, we had no specific budgetary allocation. However, we have confirmed through the CAO's office that there is sufficient budget to cover up to the 17,500. So my apologies, that's an omission on my part.
Okay, all right, thank you, and I think that's it. Okay, yep, thank you.
All right, any other comments? Oh, thank you, Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
It's not powered on.
Okay, thank you again, through you, Madam Mayor. The one thing that I think I should point out, or would like to point out, and this came through Councillor Strakian in a comment that was followed through a day or so ago. The number of members on the task force works out to be an even number of members. And can that pose a difficult situation if you have a tied vote? So I just wanted to point that out, that she had made that.
Yes, it could potentially provide that. We could bring that to one community member, or we could go to three if council was worried about that as a potential circumstance, which could be. Usually the mayor would represent a tie vote if she were the chair. So we could entertain an odd number, either go down to one community member, or as I said, go to three.
Three. May I suggest 3 community members? Thank
Okay.
you.
So are we comfortable modifying to 3 community members? Councillor Sullivan?
Yes, that would be fine with me. I just wanted to further comment that on any advisory committee, at any meeting, you could have an even number of people attending. So I don't know that it's really necessary to have an odd number on the committee. But
Yeah, I think all recommendations come to council, so it's a task force which only advises. So the real decision-making, if you will, I think will be at this body, not so much at the task force. So whether or not that tied vote becomes a salient issue, or the potential of a tied vote, is not really clear to me. I'm not as preoccupied with it, but I take the guidance from this body. If 3 makes more sense, I'm happy to go down that route. Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't profess to be an expert at this sort of thing with clean tech, green tech, whatever it is. The reason that I lay claim and want to be part of this committee is because it is an arm's length committee of Community and Economic Development Advisory Committees. So I guess that's why I'm pushing so hard for it, but I do realize and understand how complicated it became. A simple committee has kind of escalated into something that I didn't think, and I don't, honestly, I'll say I don't know if I have the headspace for it, but I will be there to support it. Thank you.
Yes. I don't remember. Who moved it? It was Deputy Mayor? Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'd accept that. Hello? Hello? I had red button, but no sound. Anyways, I'd accept that as a friendly amendment if you want to change that to 5 to 9 and 3 additional. There we go. All right.
Okay.
This is, yeah, okay, thank you, Hillary. So I'd accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. And is that acceptable to the seconder? You're the seconder? Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. I think the other issue that was raised was the timing of a final report. The interim report at this stage has the task force reporting to council next January, if I'm not mistaken, with a final report in March of 2026. I think, in fact, the interim report, given that we won't really convene the task force until April, the interim report may be too early and the final report may be too late. So, Deputy Mayor, with your indulgence, I would like to suggest maybe the interim report is March 31, 2025, with a final report no later than December 31, 2025. It gives the task force a little bit more runway in the beginning to get organized and a little bit less to deliver final recommendations.
I'd only ask, how does that fit into budget cycles? It doesn't make any difference from
It's probably
the
better
original?
suited for a budget
Yeah.
cycle to have a final report in January of 2026, right? Yes, sorry, December 2025. Yep. March 31, 2025, interim report, final December 31, 2025. So Deputy Mayor, your question is really about the interim report, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It doesn't really make that much
I mean,
difference.
certainly we can move it up to January 31, 2025. That may give us a little more breathing room. So if you're comfortable, we can make that additional accommodation. What do you think, Councillor Wilson?
So interim, January 31st?
Yep.
Stays the same? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
2025? Yeah. Sure, let's get the final report to us sooner.
So can you reread those dates as you understand them, Ms. Preston? The revised dates?
So I have that the time frame that the interim report would be provided by no later than January 31st, 2025, and the final report no later than December 31st, 2025, and then a presentation to council would follow each of those.
Is that acceptable, colleagues? What do you think, Councillor Wilson? The original proposed interim date was January 31, 2025. A final was March 31, 2026, so we'd be moving the final report back by a few months to December. Okay, and Councillor Wilson is suggesting her mic is not working. So Councillor Wilson, given that you were likely to serve on the committee, do those new dates? Yeah, okay. Okay.
Test, it works.
Yes, okay. So a small adjustment in terms of the final report, an adjustment to the composition. Is there anything else at this stage that council colleagues want to address? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so the motion's on the table. We thank Deputy Mayor and mover, Councillor Wilson, for making some revisions to the terms of reference. And if, in the absence of other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor, please? Okay, good, that carries. Thank you for everyone's work. Thank you to the clerk's office for supporting us, and to members of CDAC, Ag and Rural Affairs, and Environmental Action for their engagement. I know we'll be excited to get started. So with that, we'll move on. We have nothing under Emergency and Protective Services tonight, nothing under Finance. The fee, the rental waiver for Sustainable North Grenville was adopted under consent, as was our heavy fleet purchase. So we're going to go straight to our wastewater treatment plant tender award. And this is obviously a significant item for the municipality. And I believe we will receive a short presentation from Mr. Finley. Is that right?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay, wonderful. Fire away, Mr. Finley.
Thank you very much. So we are excited. It's been a long time coming to bring this presentation to council regarding the water pollution control plant construction. I would like to note for council that we do have Jim Steele here with us as well. Jim is an executive director with JL Richards and is also the project manager on this project with us. He's a senior environmental engineer with over 20 years experience with JL Richards, and has done a number of expansion projects in Eastern Ontario, and I'm sure other places that I'm not aware of. Next slide, please. So, sorry, he will be available for questions if needed after. So we do have a few items that we are looking for in this presentation. The first piece of this is to approve the award for the Water Pollution Control Plant expansion, the Phase A, to North America Construction, an acronym for them as NAC, in the amount of just over $64 million, with 21 million being awarded in 2024, and the balance approved for award in the subsequent years of the project. It is expected to be just over 2 years construction period, but 110 weeks is the current timeline set for this project. We are also looking to approve a contract scope change for JL Richards and Associates for some additional design and contract administration services related to the construction. Again, sign these agreements, as well as we'll see further in the presentation, authorize the Finance Department to issue a RFP for some debenture financing for the project. Next slide, please. So a bit of background. The existing plant was commissioned in 1993. It was to provide wastewater servicing to the urban service area, formerly the town of Kemptville. The plant does use conventional activated sludge as its treatment process, with the tertiary treatment, which is a bit of a polishing, almost like a Brita filter, as well as ultraviolet for disinfection. This type of treatment activity is considered one of the top types of treatment processes for dealing with wastewater. The current plant does have a maximum daily flow capacity of just over 4,500 cubic meters of flow per day, and a peak flow amount of just over 11,000 cubic meters per day. The expansion is needed to support planned growth within the urban service area. We did want to note that the current plant has exceeded its population design, but is only operating at 65% of its average day flow. We do see this as a decrease with low flow toilets and residents conserving water, as well as a number of projects to remove inflow and infiltration throughout our collection system. So although the plant is still operating at 65%, it has reached its expectations for what it's supposed to do back when it was built in 1993. Next slide, please. So this image that we have here is to show the design for the full expansion that was anticipated with this construction. I guess to kind of walk through the area that you do see is the existing plant. The areas in the darker is what's anticipated for construction, and we'll show a bit more of the phasing later on, but this was the full anticipated construction when we went through design. Next slide, please. So for this project, excuse me, we did an initial tender that closed on May 2023. We did have 5 general contractors who were pre-qualified to bid on the project. However, we did only receive 2 tenders once the closing came in, and the lowest of those tenders was just over $87 million. This was reviewed extensively between the municipality and our consultant, as well as reaching out to a few other consultants to understand the impacts of this. And it was determined, unfortunately at the time, due to financial constraints, an inability to move forward with the amount of cost that this project was going to be. And subsequently, the tender was canceled for the full award of the project. Next slide, please. With the amount of time and costs associated with the design and approvals of the project, staff and our consultant tried to look at ways to optimize this design and reduce the cost. And the best way to move forward, in our opinion, was to phase this design, as well as find some efficiencies in the design. And we started to work towards this, and this has a phased approach, like I mentioned, with Phase A, including enclosed headworks for this new system. This will have odor controls as well that will help improve any odor concerns that we've received from some of the newer residents behind the McEwens, as well as walking through the Ferguson Forest Center. And during some humid days, down the area of Maley Street, we've had some complaints before. So this, with our open headworks currently, so this new enclosed headworks should improve that significantly for complaints moving forward. We do look at 3 new primary clarifiers, as well as 3 new aeration tanks to help our treatment process. This will replace the existing 2 primary clarifiers and 2 aeration tanks that we currently have, but in a new location. It'll add an additional primary digester, as well as a new mechanical dewatering system, and some components that will go along with this, including new boilers to be able to deal with the increased primary digester system. We did also complete, once the initial tender was canceled, in an effort to continue moving through the project, there were some utility relocations that were required ahead of general construction. So staff did move forward with that. That report was brought to council in October of last year, and those works were substantially complete at the beginning of this year, with just some minor items waiting on utility companies such as Bell to move some lines before that project is fully complete and ready for the general contractor to complete their work. Next slide, please. So this image here gives a depiction of what this Phase A construction incorporates. You can see kind of to the top of the screen the new headworks building that I was mentioning with the odor control units, and it almost moves as a treatment train when you come down into the 3 new primary clarifiers and 3 new primary aeration tanks, and then the flow will actually move over to the existing plant where through this phase will still be continued to be treated through the 2 existing secondary clarifiers and into the tertiary filters and UV system before being discharged to the Rideau River. We will also require a new electrical building and standby generator system. So these are also incorporated into this construction, as it will be needed for the amount of new infrastructure that's going in. And as well, kind of to the bottom left of the screen, you will see the new primary digester and mechanical dewatering building there as well. So the bigger focus for this expansion is a bit more of the greenfield construction, with our Phase B being more of the retrofit of the existing building. And what you will see then is the existing primary tanks, as well the existing 2 aeration tanks being retrofit to now become secondary clarifiers, as well as an additional tertiary filter building. So that's the main breakout of the phasing. At this point as well, for a future phase, we did remove our high flow tanks in an effort to focus on increasing capacity and looking to add those equalization tanks at a later date. Next slide, please. So the Phase A tender was issued in October of 23 and closed in December of 2023. We did, instead of pre-qualifying general contractors, we did this tender in an effort to speed that process up as a 2-envelope system. So submissions were reviewed and evaluated based on a technical submission and a price submission. So this was to ensure during the evaluation that the contractors that did submit did have previous knowledge and ability to complete a project of this type. And if a certain threshold, a point system was met through that, then a price submission was reviewed and incorporated into the scoring system. This was identified to be a balanced way to ensure the best overall contractor was selected for a project of this magnitude and size for the municipality. Based on what was reviewed, we did have 3 bid submissions that did meet both the technical and price submission envelopes to be opened, and a total score was developed from those three, which we see in the slide here with North American Construction having the highest score of 98 points. Next slide, please. So the current timelines with this expansion, as we identified, we did do our tendering in late of 2023. We've done our evaluations and are looking to move forward with the contract award within the next few weeks here, and have construction get started right away, again, with an anticipation of a just over 2-year construction period. At that point, there'd be a warranty and project closeout, and we'd be looking to move to the Phase B of the total expansion. Next slide, please. So this slide gives a breakout of the financial impact through the submission of this project. We do note there is a $3 million construction contingency that was incorporated into the submission price, as well as providing the GL Richard scope contract at just over $600,000. We do note, because of that price tag, there will be debenture financing. We are looking to solidify that price based on our commitments through the Solicitor General and their expansion, as well as there's a housing enabler system, water system funding available that came out after we tendered. So we are currently looking to apply for that. It has an availability of up to $35 million or 73% of the total project cost. So until we know the eligibility of that and what our options are there, which should be determined in the summer, then we can develop what our financing needs are and move forward with that and come back to council with that financing. Next slide, please. So this is a conclusion of the number of items that we were looking for, and again, I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as Mr. Steele, who's with us as well.
Thank you very much. I was struck by how long it's taken to get to this point. I think in conversation yesterday, Mr. Finley, you had said that the initial environmental assessment was 2010. Is that right? I think that was in your PowerPoint.
That is correct, Your Worship.
And I distinctly remember in 2019 being sat down very early in our mandate as a new council a term ago, and being told by Ms. Dunlop that we had some serious decisions to make about the future of our water treatment plant because it was nearing capacity. So thankfully, over the last 5 years, our Public Works team has been very creative in ensuring that we still have capacity, but recognize this proposed expansion has been in the making for many, many years, 14 in fact. So I will recognize Councillor O'Sullivan, please, and any other hands. Thank you. And then Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Director Finley, I have a few questions. First one, it says the financial impact is not within the budget. So my question is, based on what you're saying regarding the debt financing possibilities that need to be clarified, do we have to wait for that to be ironed out and solidified before we can proceed with approving the tender and issuing the tender?
So through you, Your Worship, when we noted it was not within the budget, that was just in terms of our budget presentations showed a $30 million estimate for the project, and we are exceeding that. We have done some preliminary projections on what our debt financing will look like to ensure that it'll be within our debt limits. We've talked to a few banks as well as Infrastructure Ontario. Again, just reviewing the different types of loans, timing, and making sure, again, that'll fit in. So based on the numbers we've received without going through that competitive process, we do see that we will be within those debt limits. So we believe we can move forward knowing that till we have that final number, we can't come out with that project. However, we don't want to wait as costs are going to keep increasing if we don't move forward with the project. We have had the project closed since December, and contractors had a 90-day hold on their price. So if we don't move forward, we will potentially lose that pricing and have to start that process all over again. Again, understanding that we do anticipate that we will be well within our debt limits from what we've preliminarily seen.
Good, thank you.
I'll just acknowledge Karen Dunlop. I think she would like to add. Go ahead.
In addition, through you, Your Worship, we will be cash managing internally. In other words, we have water and sewer reserves and debt, or development charges, the word was escaping me. So we will cash manage as we go through the project internally. And then when we determine the amount of debt required, and hopefully we'll get some grants from above, but we will look to bring that back to council when we have to, are ready to sign a loan.
Maybe if I could just add, and Councillor Sullivan, I'll go back to you. I've learned with County Road 43, which is also a $52 million project, that the counties is doing exactly the same thing. They're waiting until the most favorable boring conditions emerge over the next few months, and they're boring in phases. So as the project requires a certain amount of capital, they will sort of action a debenture as those dollars are needed, but they are certainly waiting for things to settle a little bit more in terms of favorable interest rates. So I think that is fairly common practice with larger infrastructure projects to kind of wait until the conditions are most ideal in terms of the debenture itself. Go ahead.
Thank you. So another question regarding the complaints about odor and the will the odor continue to come from the original plant? Even though you've got all these measures in place with the enclosed headworks, et cetera, for the new plant, will this continue with what's in place for the old plant? Or, and maybe you can help me understand, is the old plant going to function, or the original plant going to function as well as the new one? Like simultaneously, they'll both be working?
So through your worship, in a couple pieces of that, the existing plant will function while construction is underway. And then once the new piece is built, it'll become the new headworks, a new start of the plant that will funnel into the old plant. So there'll be some adjustments that will be made there. Currently, our headworks are open to the environment, and where you get the odors is where there's disturbance to the water. So when our force mains are dumping into the headworks, it's creating that disturbance, which is typically where we're getting some release of that odor. That will all be done now within this new headworks, and that'll help with the odor control. Again, we do have open tanks, so there will be some odors, but that's not where the strong prevalence of it is. It is in the headworks when things are being stirred up. Again, with that being enclosed now, that should be a reduction of course, I'll never say never, because there could be, depending on the winds and things like that, different odors could be picked up, but it should decrease significantly with this improvements.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the last question is, were there costs associated with canceling the initial tender process, other than the costs associated with the pandemic and the rising costs of services and goods?
So through your worship, the costs, we had to retender the project, which wasn't anticipated. So there was some retendering costs and investigating into that piece of it. In terms of an increase just due to the timelines, I can't say through the contractors if that was there or not. Based on our evaluation of what we thought this Phase A would look like, and what it came out as, I think the prices were relatively stable, although higher than what we originally anticipated, obviously. So that was the because we hadn't gone any further with construction, that was the only increase that we saw.
Okay, thank you. And did any of the original bidders resubmit for the second time it was tendered?
Through your worship, yes, both that bid the first time did bid the second time, as well as an additional. Again, we did actually have two more contractors bid, but they didn't meet the technical thresholds to look into the pricing piece. So we actually, instead of, we had two originals and then an additional three that looked at the project.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. I think that, okay, I'm live here. Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. I've got a couple of questions. I'm not sure where to start, but there's three terms in your presentation that I just need a little bit more clarity on. Approved for award, that's the final, that's Phase B. Anything other than Phase A? We're talking about the remainder will be approved for award, so it's not, we're not actually awarding it, but we have that chunk of money to spend on the retrofit. Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Page 2 of your presentation might be.
So through your worship, what we have there is we've asked council to approve all of Phase A, which is the $64 million. Now, out of that $64 million, we intend to award the $21 million for 2024 and have the other $43 million, again, approved for the remainder of the project. However, we're just trying to identify what was going to be done in 2024. So
Right.
it is looking for approval of the entire project, this $64 million.
So it's approved, but it's not awarded. There's a distinction between approving it and awarding it?
So the approval is for council to give that direction, and the award is the signing of the contracts.
Oh, I see, okay. The other term is scope change. Now, I understand that we've already gone through a scope change to accommodate the proposed correction center, but that's not part of the $645,000. This is a separate scope change cost.
That is correct, through your worship. This scope change, the way the original project was set up was that JL Richards would provide a design and a tender specifications and take us through that process. And then we did subsequent, an additional scope change to include contract admin services. And what we're looking for through this scope change is to continue with those contract administration services, as well as there's some sub-consultants that are being brought into the project for things like quality assurance. So they'll do compaction tests, concrete testing. There's membranes for the digester that need to be inspected and testing. So that's bringing all the construction pieces in now, where before we were looking at design. So this is specific to construction, not the design for the expansion because of the correctional facility.
Yeah, that design, that scope of change for the correctional facility has already been done, and that's how we ended up with the $87 million figure, doing it all. Otherwise, without that accommodation for the capacity for the correctional center, the tenders theoretically would be much cheaper, correct? I guess what I'm saying is that scope of change has already been paid for by the Solicitor General, right?
That is
Okay,
correct.
right.
Yes.
So this is additional stuff that you just referred to. The other term is planned growth, to accommodate planned growth. How do we know what the planned growth is?
So through your worship, a number of different documents. So we do have, and what we're going through right now is our servicing master plans, where through the projected growth populations within the municipality, we'll look at the needs of that growth and what we've identified through the 2015 master plan was the needs for this expansion to see the 20-year outlook of that study. Again, we are revamping that study to see what the next 20 years is going to look like, and that those are the planned growth that we project based on.
And there was comment that with the current plant, we've already exceeded the growth projection, and we've managed to maintain 65% of the maximum daily flow or whatever.
Correct.
So I would anticipate we're getting better and better at that, right? So we're safe, basically.
Through your worship, we do see the efficiencies. However, how fast growth comes versus what we predict can always be a factor.
Yeah.
But yes, we do see a difference between the theoretical flows and what is actually coming to the plant has been reduced.
If I might, I've got some questions about the financing. So Phase A is 64 million, and the retrofit is happening in Phase B. Am I to assume that the retrofit is projected to cost 23 million? In other words, the difference between 64 million and 87 million? Do we have a retrofit cost?
Through your worship, we did, again, with delaying a few of the items, like the high flow tanks, as well as delaying septage, we've also done a bit of redesign to optimize those retrofits. We do predict it's probably in that $20 million range. However, again, we'll see what the market conditions are at and how, if any, see what our design changes have reduced that cost with.
Okay. So it's an estimate, but a conservative estimate. Okay. The debenture is, we're estimating is going to be 4.5% over 30 years, and that the annual pay down of that debenture is like 1.9 million. Am I to understand that that's interest only?
So through your worship, there was a few different, so 4.9% was one of the rates that were provided to us for a 30-year term to look at. At that 1.9, just under $2 million. Again, with some down payment pieces there to reduce that. That is looking at it with what we understand our Solicitor General has committed to in what they've committed to as part of this project. Again, once we have those numbers firm, that's when we will look at the picture, but we wanted to provide an idea to ensure that we were within our debt limits at the moment. So we will go back out and try and see if we can get better numbers than that. But currently yes, those numbers are, we've preliminarily been told.
Yeah, but what I'm reading is $2 million a year to service that debt. Is that correct? Is that what I read in the fine print?
Correct, $2 million at that 30-year term at the moment is what we were looking at, yes.
Oh, I see. And that's principal and interest, or just interest?
Correct.
Okay. And we'll be paying down part of that. We've got $3 million in reserves from the DC reserves. And then, of course, as more houses come on stream, we'll have the DC charges that are dedicated to the expansion plant as part of that.
That is correct, through your worship. There is the development charges for any new construction within the urban service area does have a component that is directly to fund this expansion project.
And we're about to go through a DC study because we're 5 years away from our last DC study. So we'll have a chance to take a look during that DC study this year. I assume it's happening this year, at how much we can, what component or how big that component is to service that debt.
Through your worship.
Yeah.
That is correct. Now, when we did the last development charge study, we had our preliminary estimates that didn't match, obviously, the significant funds we see here. So this new development charge study will take the actuals into account and determine how we pay this project back through development charges.
Final question, and I think you know the answer, is so all of this will be financed through development charges, any grants that we can receive. user fees, water and wastewater user fees in the urban service area, but none of it will come from general taxation, including the interest on the debt. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct in the sense that the entire project will be paid through DCs. As we've mentioned, we don't have enough DCs at the moment to pay for it. So there may have to be some interim borrowing from the water and wastewater reserves to help with that debenture piece while it's being financed. But and that was determined through our water rate study. So it was to be kept within the water and wastewater fees. But the intent is any money that is used for this, when new development charges are received, they pay that reserve back because it is a growth project.
Right. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Mayor Peckford, just to reiterate what Deputy Mayor Barclay has said, he asked the questions that I was going to ask. It's okay. I've been asked by the rural residents they don't want to pay for this, so they just want reassurance that it's going to come through the town.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the one point I do want to note is in our development charge studies, there is an individual component for new builds for the septage receiving area, because that was seen as something the rural residents would use rather than the urban service. So that there is that small component. However, it's the overall development charge piece for that was $200,000. So there. And it's only new residents coming in, so that would see that on their development charge build.
Through you. So that would mean anybody that's building in the rural area part of their development charge would go towards that.
Through your worship, that's correct. Currently, the way the development charge is set up is $294 is paid towards that septage receiving area.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other questions at this stage? And maybe before I go there, I mean, ultimately, my observations are any large infrastructure project, whether it's a road or a wastewater expansion, the reality is that it's rare for a municipality to have all the funds in the bank at one time to be able to finance that with an upfront payment of 50, 60, 70, 80 million. So the expansion of the long-term care facility in Athens, which is nearly a $90 million project for the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, while it is being financed in part through the tax base because it's a long-term care facility, and there are some significant grants, the same calculations sort of apply in terms of how you debenture at the right time to minimize borrowing costs and to make payments manageable over decades. So in this case, of course, because it is the water pollution control plant, again, as it's been made abundantly clear, we are legally obligated to segregate the expenditures to the users of the system and to the development charges. And to apply the development charges that are paid by developers for every commercial and residential property. So that obviously will continue, and I remember those early days of the long-term financial plan where it was clearly laid out that over a 30-year period, the municipality would collect X amount of development charges, and obviously the 5-year development charge review that we have undertaken, the municipality undertakes, allows us to recalibrate the needs of the municipality from a growth perspective to ensure that there are sufficient funds for a project such as this. So the reality is, 1994, as a member of the Anglican Church tells me, he remembers it well. Every time I see him when I go to St. James, he talks about the initial establishment of a water pollution control plant after, I think, there was significant concerns about E. coli, if I'm not mistaken. So the province compelled the municipality, really forced the municipality's hand to build the initial plant. Councillor Wilson, you remember this? And as a consequence, that plant has served us extremely well over 30 years. I think it was thought to be quite expensive at the time, right? Quite an expensive proposition for beneficiaries of the system on town water and sewer. But ultimately, you know, it has served the community extremely well. And 30 years later, here we are having to do it all over again, given not just the growth we're seeing, but the fact that that plant can only carry on with its current capacity for so long. It does need some of those upgrades to plan for the future and to optimize its current functioning. So it may feel like a bit of a tough pill to swallow at this stage, but I think in the long run, and a good investment. Councillor Wilson.
What I will say is that nobody in the town proper wants to pay frontage charges again.
And those are not
Absolutely not.
anticipated. Those are not anticipated. So frontage charges were a mechanism by which
That's how we
Yeah.
had the last one built. So.
the beneficiaries, right, residential and commercial property owners, were charged in part for the costs associated with that early plant. Fortunately, in the 30 years since, development charges have become a much more commonly utilized mechanism to offset the cost to any community for its growth. So thankfully, we're in a good position to have some amount of confidence that the growth that we're seeing and the growth to come will fully 100% cover the costs being associated with this very necessary expansion. So. But you're right, the frontage charges
It's a pain point. It's a pain point.
You were absolutely right. That's definitely how it's been described to me on more than one occasion. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question again regarding the DC charges. Under certain circumstances, developers can have DC charges waived in the urban area. And my question is, do we at least get to keep the portion that would be going towards this very necessary project?
Go ahead, Ms. Dunlop.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you for the question. It's actually been something that we have discussed over the years. If you waive development fees for such things as affordable housing complexes or downtown development, no, it waives 100% the fees unless council directs otherwise. Is part of the waiving, can say a component of the development charges need to be paid, but no, typically it's 100% is waived.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does that, if council decided to modify that so that we would keep the really important piece that would go towards this necessary infrastructure, does that have to wait till the 5-year review of DC charges, or can it be changed by a motion of council at any time?
No, as I understand it, the development charge review process establishes a development charge for any developer within a 5-year period. The study, I think, is upcoming, Ms. Dunlop, this year, and we will have the opportunity to reconsider any exemptions that are currently made in the downtown, or to some extent for affordability, but there are real limitations because a lot of the affordability exemptions that the province has imposed are provincially mandated, so we have limited discretion. They don't remove entirely all development charges, but they diminish the payment of some of those development charges. But it is, I think, a discussion we certainly anticipate having later this year once we have the study in hand. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry. Just to Councillor O'Sullivan's suggestion that what she describes is very important, and I agree, very important part of the development charge be still charged to downtown residents and businesses. I think you'd find people not wanting to pay the frontage charge twice. The current development that we've enjoyed, the growth that we've seen, has been supported by the funding of the original plant, and that was through frontage charges of residents and businesses downtown, or residents, excuse me, not businesses. Was it businesses as well? Yeah, so I think the idea of them paying twice would not sit well.
I think this is, like, with respect to conversation for another day, because we're going into sort of the development charge arena, which is complex, and Deputy Mayor, I totally take your point. There is a perception that property owners downtown already paid once through frontage charges for the initial plant 30 years ago, and it is a pain point, as Councillor Wilson tells us, for lots of people. But certainly, I think once we get the development charge study update, this will certainly be a discussion that will be had at this table among council colleagues about how to proceed with our DCs moving forward. The good news is municipality of North Grenville was very wise a number of years ago to institute development charges. So I salute the leadership at the time that anticipated that we would need to offset some significant investments in infrastructure with, DCs, and that they were and continue to be an extremely valuable mechanism for communities such as ours. Deputy Mayor, I just wanted to quickly respond. At some point, I think you may have inadvertently suggested that the Eastern Ontario Correctional Facility made this plant much more expensive. That certainly isn't my observation. I think there was a minor accommodation to the plant in anticipation of the capacity that was requested from the proposed correctional facility. Of course, the province paid for the engineering accommodations at that time that had to be made. And through the letter we've received recently, they continue to commit to their proportional share of the capacity that they've asked for. So with that in mind, I don't think, other than obviously there was some time delay to incorporating what they were asking for, I don't think that the cost of the plant is attributable per se to the correctional facility, but more to the inflationary times that we're in. So that's my sense of it, Mr. Finley. I don't know if you have anything else to add. Mr. Finley?
Through your worship, I guess the overall cost was higher than we had originally anticipated, and I may ask Jim. He might be able to comment a little bit more on where some of those costs came from. Again, when we did our first evaluations on this, we were pre-COVID, pre-high inflation times. And I think there's some supply chain issues as well. But Jim, I don't know if there's more we want to kind of add to that of some costing.
Certainly, when we look at County Road F43, which was estimated when I got elected in 2018 to be a $29 million project, we're now at 52. So clearly, some of the pressures around construction are extremely real when we're looking at these large projects.
Yeah, so the main costs that we've seen are inflation, obviously, that happened through the pandemic, supply chain issues, and labor shortages. So those are happening in a wide variety of projects, from water, wastewater, any buildings, particularly mechanical, electrical, and concrete work is where we see the premiums.
Great. Councillor Barclay, and then hopefully we can bring this to a close.
Yeah, if you can indulge me, are you saying that the additional capacity required for the correctional facility has no cost?
No, I'm not saying it has no cost, but I'm not sure it was the major cost driver. I don't observe it as a major cost driver. It's a variable, certainly, but I don't think it was the major cost driver of where we are today.
Okay,
That's all.
I'll take that.
Okay, okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add in your capacity? I understand I did ask about the proposed recipient before this meeting in terms of NAC as the recommended contractor, and I understand that you're fairly familiar with them, and they've done good work and are sort of have been well received from other municipalities. Is that, do you want to just reinforce what I think is my understanding?
Sure, yeah. They're well-known in the industry. They focus on this type of work, water purification, wastewater treatment, pumping stations, reservoirs, that type of work. That's one of the main areas they focus on. I've worked with them on a number of projects in other municipalities, and they've been successfully completed. So they do a lot of work themselves as well. They have their own electricians, mechanical, so they don't subcontract out a lot of the work as other general contractors do. So.
And might I ask, from your experience, the kind of modifications and expansion to these plants are fairly standard in Eastern Ontario in terms of how municipalities are increasing their capacity for these water pollution control plants?
Yeah, so we've worked at municipalities throughout Eastern Ontario and really across the province, Northern Ontario as well. So yeah, we're sticking with the conventional activated sludge treatment, which is what has served well, as we've heard, with the existing plant. So expanding the way we are is making use of the existing infrastructure, reusing tanks and repurposing as much as you can, as opposed to constructing all new, which would be more expensive.
And the shelf life for a facility such as this, recognizing that the 30-year-old plant is in okay shape, right? It needs some optimization and some work clearly, but what's usually the lifespan of an expanded facility once you do all of those upgrades? Are you looking at another 30, 40 years? What typically do you see with facilities such as this?
Yeah, there's two main drivers for for upgrades to facilities. One is growth, where your capacity, so that can happen, in shorter terms, obviously, if there's a lot of growth. But just as far as the facilities, it typically is 20, 30 years. For a major upgrade, there may be some things like, some mechanical components that may wear out earlier, that type of thing. But for the major upgrades, it's typically 20, 30 years in that range.
Okay. And there's no way to sort of build, I guess you could really overbuild a facility, for an anticipated 50 years, but it's really the financial expense attached to that makes it somewhat prohibitive, I assume.
Yeah, you try to just optimize with what you have, which is what has been completed here, reusing the existing tanks fully. So yeah, you would be paying more now, and some of those things in 50 years might already deteriorate. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Anything else for a consultant? Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, council colleagues, motion is on the table. Any remaining comments or questions? If not, I'm going to call the vote. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you for indulging me tonight, Madam Mayor. This is more of a comment, and that is, I've heard tonight that the financing of this won't negatively affect our debt limits. But I think we are a little bit blind in not having a 4-year financial forecast and seeing how we are literally going to be managing this new debt. This is just one piece of infrastructure that needs attention. So I anticipate, down the road that there's other pieces of infrastructure that needs our financing. So it would be great, and I'm just putting it on the table, at some point in time to have a 4-year forecast, some projected forecast. Thanks.
I expect with the DC study and some of the long-term financials being refreshed, that information will be available in a matter of months. Is that correct, Mr. Finley?
Madam Mayor, once we have our servicing master plan, which is out for proposals at the moment, that'll help determine some of those larger capital growth items that we will foresee in the future. But it will take a good piece of the year by the time we close that out through public consultations and items like that. It does close soon, but it will take some time to get those projections.
Within the year, then?
Correct.
I think we can be optimistic that we'll see it within the year. All right. Okay. I will look for a mover and a seconder then. And that is for the recommendation that is before you. I don't think I need to reread it for it to be on the record. Is that right, Ms. Preston? You can see that there are 4 parts to the motion, and that is the approval of the expansion Phase A construction to North American Construction in the amount of $64,198,841, excluding applicable taxes. There is the section around approval of the contract scope change to J.L. Richards and Associates, the authorization for our CAO or their designate and mayor to execute the contracts, and the authorization to the finance department to issue an RFP for the debt debenture, Phase A. So mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Given that we've had a fulsome discussion, I think I can call the vote. All in favor? Okay, thank you. That carries. All right. Moving on, 2023 Annual Drinking Water Report. Of course, this was a consent item, but I did want to bring to the attention of ourselves as well as council colleagues. We don't have Ashley with us this evening. Oh, there you are. I'm so sorry. I was looking over there. If you might, would you mind if we asked you a couple of questions? Excellent. Perfect. I know that the report references that this information is generated to be in compliance with the Ontario Safe Drinking Water Act 2002. And of course, there's a number of findings that are reported on a monthly basis, or is it a daily basis, when you're monitoring water quality for the purposes of reporting to the province under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Obviously, you're collecting data all the time. So how does that data get compiled for the purposes of the report?
So the data is mostly just collected internally. Depends what you're talking about. So if you're talking about our sampling, for example, so we send it to the lab and we get our lab reports, and then we file them all away and I track them. You asked about what gets reported to the ministry on a regular basis. The only thing that would get directly reported to the ministry would be like an adverse water quality incident or any incidents where we believe that there was unsafe drinking water. Then it would get reported to the ministry and to the health unit.
And we're collecting those water samples, is it weekly, monthly? How does it typically work?
It depends on the sample, but microbiological, it's weekly.
Okay.
And we take our daily chlorine residuals.
Okay.
And then there's some different samplings. We have our quarterlies for THMs, HAAs, and nitrates. And then there's some different sampling that's spread out over like a longer calendar for generally like heavy metals and pesticides and that sort of thing.
Okay. And obviously, in 2023, this report says there were no adverse water quality incidents.
That's correct.
Right, which is, I think, typical of this municipality. It's rare to have an adverse water quality incident. Is that the case? Is that your understanding? That's what I remember.
That's correct. I would say we have one like every other year. It's
Okay.
typical.
And those adverse water quality incidents tend to be what exactly when there is one? Or is that hard to predict?
Since I've been here, they've always been total coliform in like a distribution sample, and they're always low, and we always have maintained our chlorine residual.
Okay. And what, perhaps in plain language, you could tell me, you referred to
A total coliform.
Okay.
And so that's the presence of a bacteria that it could be E. coli, but it might be other types of bacteria, but the type of bacteria that would be found in fecal matter.
Gotcha. Okay. And when there is an adverse water quality incident, what happens?
So do you mean like operationally or reporting wise?
Both.
Both? Okay. So on the reporting side, we would phone the Spills Action Center, which is the Ministry of the Environment, and the Ministry of Health to report, what time it happened at and what we're doing and everything. Gotcha. So from there, the Ministry of Health can provide direction on what they'd like us to do. If they have no direction, then we follow OREG 170 for what we have to do, and then also our own best practices, which are usually above and beyond what they're asking for. And so in the case of a total coliform, we would resample and flush, and then resample again.
And so to have no adverse incidents in 2023 is obviously encouraging, inspires confidence in the system, right, among
Yeah, correct.
obviously users of town water, right? So you have to be on town water because you're only testing really that our responsibilities are to test town water because we oversee that system, correct? Okay.
Yeah, we do not cover rural
Right.
wells or just the town of
The
Kemptville.
town water system.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. That was really all of the questions I had. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, thank you, Ashley.
You're very
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you. So in regards to the report, the recommendation is that council receive this report titled 2023 Annual Drinking Water Report for information purposes and receive the 2023 Annual Performance and Summary Report, Kemptville Drinking Water System for information purposes in compliance with the Ontario Safe Drinking Water Act 2002. Ashley, I did need to ask, you are a team of how many in our water sewer division oversee water quality in particular? I know there's quite a number of you.
For the operators, you mean? So
Yes.
we have, I believe it's 10 operators.
10 operators.
Yeah, 1 ORO, 2 leads, and then the operators.
And again, these are financed through the water sewer user fees.
Correct.
And that are paid into the municipality.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So colleagues, almost at the end here. Yes, Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have one question regarding the water main breaks. This past, in 2023, there were 5 reported. How many are normal? Is that lower than usual?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that would be a little, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so it's hard to give hard stats or anything, but I would say that's a little bit lower than normal. It really depends on how cold the winter is, frankly, and the
Because it's
back and forth
related.
on the temperature, because that causes frost heave, which causes damage to the infrastructure.
Okay. But the infrastructure, is it perhaps too because there's been more ongoing replacement of old infrastructure that maybe the breaks are getting less?
We do try to prioritize different hot spots, because if you get a certain amount of water breaks in an area, then we know that is probably due for replacement. So when we have the funds available, we do try to prioritize replacement. So,
Okay.
and the new, we use PVC now instead of ductile iron. And so PVC, it doesn't get the kind of rust holes,
Right.
that ductile iron tends to get. So
Okay. Well, thank you and congratulations to your team for a good year.
thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Sullivan, with that, would you mind moving the recommendation for receipt of the report? Thank you, and I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Wilson, thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Good, that carries. And we'll move on. So lots of talk about water and wastewater this evening. Correspondence, I don't believe we have any correspondence, Ms. Preston. Other business, no other business was noted. Notice of motions, council colleagues, any notices of motion? None. Introduction and consideration of bylaws, I believe we've addressed that, Ms. Preston. Okay. Questions from the public and the media relating to items? Any questions? Not seeing any from our one member of the public. Thank you. And then I'll go to close the meeting. Confirmation bylaw. That is that bylaw 2024 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on March 19th, 2024 be adopted and passed. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Sullivan, Deputy Mayor, thank you. I'll call the vote. All in favor? An adjournment at 8:01. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council adjourn at 8:01 p.m. I'll look for a mover or seconder. Councillor Wilson, seconder over here. Thank you. Deputy Mayor. I will call the vote. All in favor? And I just want to thank Mr. Finley and his team for the years of work on what brought us to this evening's decision around the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. A job well done for certain and lots to come. So thank you. Adjourned.